Hello and welcome to Strange Journeys. I'm glad you're with us today. Welcome to our very first official live stream. And now we're going to welcome everybody back in. And we may have others joining us in a little bit. Everybody say hello. Everybody
hello,
say
everybody.
Hello. All right. Everybody, welcome to Strange Journeys. My name is Tom Rouse, and you've been hearing me talk about this, hopefully, for a couple of weeks now. And my wife is trying to get her computer hooked up so she can join us. And just real quick, we're going to introduce everybody. All right. Tommy, start it out. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, my name's Tommy. I'm just
Starting with
a good old country boy, I guess you could say. Likes my paranormal.
All right.
Mike, I don't know.
Yeah, we got a little bit of back lag on it. And then over on my view, down below him, is Dagny Taggert. Why don't you introduce yourself, Dagny? Dagny.
I'm Dagny. I'm pretty much an artist and a creative person, and I've had a ridiculous amount of paranormal type experiences throughout my life, and I fit in with you guys.
All right, excellent. Glad you're here. And down below me is Tim. Your mic is muted.
I know.
There we go.
I muted.
Okay.
There's other stuff going on in the room around me.
Okay. Well, welcome to Tim Shepard. Tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
I am Tim Shepard. I'm a historian and paranormal researcher. Also the owner of Ravenwind Tours here in the state of Kansas, along with my wife Storm. We've got a few tour guides working for us. Not at the moment, of course, because we have that wonderful coronavirus going around, but definitely have a lot of interest in the paranormal.
Excellent. Well, those of you that are watching, I've said before, we've got our executive team, these folks that have volunteered to help me do this. And today's show, our very first official show, we've had a couple of sneak previews and promos, but this is our first official show. Each one of these guys and myself are going to be sharing our most poignant paranormal story, whatever got us into the paranormal, whatever we've experienced, the most profound, that kind of thing. We're going to try to do it all in about 30 to 40 minutes because we don't want to wear anybody out. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that as we're kicking off the show, we are going to offer you, or we're already offering you, a 20% discount at our merch store. You'll see it there at the bottom of the screen, teespring.com/stores/strange journey stuff. If you go there and use the intro code that's rolling across the bottom of your screen, intro 20, you're going to get a 20% discount off everything on the site until tomorrow, midnight, I believe it cuts off. So go there and buy you a t-shirt. Well, I'll show you what we're talking about. Real quick, go to Strange Journeys stuff there on Teespring, and you're going to see t-shirts and coffee mugs and die-cut stickers. Now, we're just getting started, so there's not a whole lot of stuff on there, but go there and check it out when you get a few minutes, and use that code INTRO20 for your 20% kickoff discount for just watching us and for just coming to hang out with us for a minute.
I need a coffee cup.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of them there. And Teespring is one of those sites. It's free, but just to let you know, we're going to be advertising on here, stuff like that. Tim's sites, Dagny Dagny, you have you do graphic design, don't you? So we're going to be basically advertising stuff that we do. Tommy has a Facebook group of Haunted Stories of Decatur County, which y'all need to check out. But we're going to be advertising Tim's Ravenwind Tours. We're going to be advertising Christine Rogers' books, Tim's books, by the way, as well. So, but we're not paying for advertising right now, I guess, because we don't have the money to do it. But if you go to this Strange Journey Stuff page and buy something, that actually goes to kind of help out the expenses that I've incurred. All right. Before we get to the paranormal stories, our most poignant ones, I want to share with you the latest or a current UFO sighting. Back on May the 14th, this year, guys, this year in Welborn, Florida, someone saw a triangular UFO. Says they saw a light in the sky brighter than Venus, Venus has been pretty bright here lately, if you notice. It was approaching their position from the south. The sky was clear. The light breeze temp was about 74 degrees. The craft was moving very slowly to the north and passed directly overhead. I estimated its size to be about 20,000. Well, it was large and at about 20,000 feet. As it passed overhead, I could make out the triangular shape. There were small lights at each point and a large bright light in the center. How many of you heard that before? A lot of the UFO sightings I've heard about in the last few years have been described just that way. Lights on each point and a large bright light in the center. Said there was no sound, no contrail, and no strobe light. Passing overhead, it changed course to the east. Again, no sound. And they said they lost sight of it over Lake City. And I'm about to show you where we're at. But he said he checked flight aware for air traffic and nothing within miles. Had a strong flashlight with me, 1,500 lumens, they say, and attempted to signal, but there was no response. No response. But let me show you where that was at. Do I still? Yes, I still have it up there. This was in Welborn, Florida. That's where this latest UFO sighting was at. And that's something I want to do, like in every show. Different ones of us will be sharing latest sightings. And we're going to get into the paranormal stories now, but I wanted to say something. In my opinion, the only true and irrefutable evidence of the paranormal is personal experience. What each individual has gone through and seen and experienced and witnessed for themselves, there's no debunker out there that can change your personal belief, your personal feeling. That's what I used to tell people on my tours when I take tours. You know, your personal experience can't be refuted by anybody. And that's what we're celebrating with this show, personal experience. When we get into all the other weird stuff, we're still going to be celebrating personal experience. So we want to share our stories. And my wife is still not here. I don't know what's going on there. But we want to share our stories with you. So, guys, we're going to take about 5 minutes or so. We want to hear your story. And we're going to start with Tommy. That one you wrote and shared with the rest of our executive team, which, by the way, I've called these guys my executive team. And if you do the initials, that's ET. These are my ETs. So, Tommy, you're the first ET up. Tell us about that experience you had.
All right. Well, y'all overlook my mic, my internet. It lags a little bit, so my mouth and my words are probably not. Yeah. About 20 years ago, about a little more than that. About 20, 25 years ago, I was renting a little house in a town close by here. That it wasn't no little house. It was a great old big yellow house, and that's how everybody knew it, by the yellow house. I'd never heard no kind of stories about it or anything until after this happened. But I'm laying there one night, my wife at the time and I was I guess about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's the end of July, 1st of August. Heat wave coming in. It's like 110 degrees in the shade. We had a fan in the window that's blowing hot air around. But I woke up about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't move, and I could see my own breath. It was so cold. Somebody told me a little bit after that me not moving was called sleep paralysis.
Yeah,
But the only thing I could do is look above my head and look down toward. Yeah, only thing I could do is turn my head down, look down towards the living room. I tried to wake my wife up, tried to holler at her. I couldn't get no sound to come out. And I guess about maybe a foot off the floor and about a foot down from the ceiling, it was a grayish black, shadowy. This is my first experience of what I call a shadow figure of a man that, I don't know, he's tall, skinny fella, and he had one of what I call the big rim preacher hats.
Wow.
It scared the far out of me. I ain't gonna kid you. It didn't take me long after. It wasn't long that it stayed there. And wasn't long we stayed there either after that. But it stayed there just a few minutes, and then when he disappeared, everything went back to normal. We went back to sweating. I could breathe and move, and I was up resting the night, going room to room, trying to find something or anything that could have even made me see that, but I couldn't find nothing nowhere. The more I learned about it, it turned out there was a little shed that started out being a storm that the roof of it had collapsed in, and the people that owned the place at the time just cleaned it out and built a shed over it. And the older gentleman, had some mental issues, I guess, or something happened to him, but he wound up hanging himself in that shed. So I don't know if that might have been him that I was seeing or what it was, but like I said, I know it didn't take us just a couple of days, and we was moving somewhere else.
Wow. Now you said it was like a big preacher hat.
What I call the big rim preacher hats. You used to see the guys with the big black hats with real wide brims on them in Western movies.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I've heard that in other events where a shadow person was seen and the sleep paralysis. And it's amazing that you say that because, I mean, there are other folks out there witness the same thing with sleep paralysis.
Same exact description.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've heard it before too. That's crazy. I haven't heard it from him though.
No, well, that's part of the reason I wanted it to be fresh, so that those of us that are here are hearing these stories for the first time, just like our listeners and whoever's watching. But
Cool.
I mean, I heard one just last week of a girl as a teenager looked up in one of those old houses where the bedrooms kind of were connected to each other, and she saw through like the second bedroom a man standing there with a big old black hat like that. So that's wild, man. And then you say that was just within the last few years?
No, that was about 25 years ago.
Okay.
My oldest son, he's 29. He was, I think, 4 or 5 then. So.
Oh, okay. Wow, I think I've had sleep paralysis before. I really don't remember, but when people describe it, it sounds, like way in the back of your memory. You're like, okay, I think I've dealt with this before. That's awesome, brother. Thank you for sharing.
Right.
Well, Dagny, what you got, girl?
Yeah, that was what.
Well, you asked us.
I'm sorry.
You asked us to share one of our paranormal experiences, preferably something that was our first experience or something very
profound. Yeah.
So I'm going to share the one that was first to me, even though I found out when I was older that was definitely not the first, but it's the first I remember.
Okay.
my mom and I and my sister Timmy we had moved into my grandfather's trailer in Arkansas. I was going to turn 5 around that time. It was summer, and this was back in '84. And his trailer was in the middle of the woods in Arkansas, middle of nowhere, like the most middle of nowhere I've ever lived. He was the principal of the town. There was a 2-room schoolhouse. My grandma was the teacher. He was also the minister for the town. And this is where I really got introduced to the Bible and Bible stories. And I'd hear him doing his sermons and stuff. And so a lot of that was in my head being taught to me at that time. So when this occurred, I realized that a lot of what he was saying came back to me in those thoughts. One night we were asleep in the trailer, and my sister and I were on the hide-a-bed that pulled out in the living room. My mom was in the next room that was a tiny little bedroom, and then my grandparents were past the bathroom from her in the master. And it had to be early in the morning because I felt that chill in the air, and Arkansas only gets chill in the air in summer for like 5 minutes. So, and it's only like 3, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're melting the whole time. And I woke up like something had woken me up, and I was not startled at all. It was almost like someone said, "Hey, wake up." So I sat up and said, "Hey."
Yeah.
And this blue light, like as big as my head, was like just sitting in front of me, floating in front of me. And the entire house, we were in the middle of the woods. We had all the lights in the house off. There was not even moonlight coming in. It was so pitch black. But this blue glowing ball was just sitting arm's length in front of me. And
wow.
My automatic response, I was comfortable. I was accepting. I was just like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I knew in my heart that it was an angel. And I don't know how much of that comes from the fact that I had just recently been taught Bible and all that. But I was totally calm and like, "Oh, good to see you." I felt like, how cool that it would come see me.
Yeah.
And so then it started floating away from me, and I moved down to the end of the hide-a-bed, and it kept moving, and I went forward. Its intention was it wanted me to follow it. It wanted to show me something. I just knew this. It didn't tell me, but I knew this. So I got off the hide-a-bed, and I followed it through the living room, around the hide-a-bed, and then down the hallway to the next room on my left, which was where my mom was sleeping. And I wasn't afraid of the dark. I wasn't afraid of anything. There was no fear at all.
Cool.
And it went in, and it like settled right above my mom. She was in the bed asleep, and I just stood there for what felt like many minutes, but I don't know how long it was. Just knowing that this is what it wanted me to see. And then it was suddenly just gone. And so I crawled into the bed with my mom, curled up with her. And then the next morning, I was the last one to wake up. And I woke up in her bed. She wasn't there. My sister, my grandma, and my grandpa were in the living room. My grandpa was making breakfast. My grandma was holding my sister, and my sister seemed really distraught. And I don't know what exactly my mom said before she left, but she somehow made it sound to them that she was leaving and not coming back kind of feeling.
Right.
My mom was gone, and for a year after that, I never saw her again. She was gone. So it was almost like this thing was telling me to say goodbye or something. And I, at the moment, just kind of rode the wave, went with it. But I didn't realize at that time that 8 years later, this thing would appear again. And it is, at this point, I'm 40. It's appeared to me about 10 times in my life.
Wow.
And every time it has been prior to something extremely life-changing. Almost like it's telling me, brace yourself. Here comes something intense.
Right.
That's my thing.
So I mean, you other guys can ask questions if you want to. It don't have to be just me. But so you feel like this blue orb or this angel appearing as a blue light or orb is just there to like bring you peace or strength through.
I think what I've come to conclude is that it's bracing me. It's telling me, okay, you're about to face something that's going to be very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So be ready. And it's happened quite a few times, and every time it has been sometimes moments, sometimes days prior to my entire life changing.
Sorry, somebody's getting a call. Uh-oh.
But
Sorry.
I don't, even though that moment I thought it was an angel and just knew it was an angel, I still to this day don't know that that's what it was. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if my thoughts about that were influenced by what I was being taught at the time.
Right.
And I really wonder if it was extraterrestrial, if it was angel, if it was ghost, I don't know what it was, but it's never left me.
Never left you. I mean, you feel it. I mean, you feel it.
I know that it just appears sometimes, and I don't feel like it's always around.
Yeah.
But I know that if I have to face something really intense in life, it will probably show up to warn me first.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now,
the closest.
Everybody has an angel.
I'm super into researching everything and learning all I can about things I don't understand. I love to not understand something and try to figure it out. And I can't. The closest thing I've ever found of any description someone else has given of something like this is ball lightning. And that's still not quite what I feel is exactly what I was seeing.
Right. Well, I mean, this is ironic. Tommy mentioned the shadow figure with the big hat. You're mentioning the blue light or orb, and I'm going to ask both of you: had you ever heard of such a thing before you experienced that?
Not at all. Never.
Wow. That's what's so unique about this. You know, people are experiencing these things, and actually, you know, it's all, if I can use the word, innocent.
Yeah, I was only 4 at the time. I hadn't even turned 5 yet, so
yeah,
I had very little knowledge of anything at that point.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's just, we've had two unique sightings, I guess you'd call it, that are so prevalent, and that I say prevalent, but
Other
you
people
don't
are
realize,
seeing this too.
right? And you don't realize, you know, like I've heard these stories, both of these kinds of stories in the past several weeks, and I was like, well, I don't doubt their stories, but I don't know anybody that's ever experienced that, and now I do.
Now you do.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so cool about it. Thank you, Dagny. That was awesome. I mean, both of you guys.
Totally.
And we're going to go on with Tim next, but we're trying to get my wife in. She keeps having issues for some reason, and I can't figure it out. It says she's backstage, and I can't figure out what's up with that. But as we go on to Tim's story, Tim and I met several years ago through a company that we used to work for. As a matter of fact, when it was a national haunted tour company, and he was leading a tour in Kansas, I was leading a tour in Alabama, and I mean, you were already in the company before I came along, weren't you, Tim?
I think so. I don't know exactly when you came in. I know that I was.
Yeah.
the Topeka area when we first started there was really kind of different. I know that there were lots of people who came in.
Right.
There was a guy back then when I started. They used to joke about he drove his lawnmower to go to tours.
I don't remember that one. But well, when that national company broke apart, I mean, Tim took ownership of his tour. I took ownership of my tour, and his has gone successfully ever since. We're going on what, 5 or 6 years now?
We're in our 7th year.
Excellent.
7.
So. Nice.
Well, ours rocked on, for a couple of years, and I don't know. I mean, I have. So basically, what you're experiencing now, anybody watching this, is my tour being transferred over into this live stream broadcast that, in a sense, Strange Journeys and that kind of, that we're basically turning the page and doing something in a different direction. But Tim leads Ravenwind Tours. He's also written a couple of books about hauntings in Kansas. And Tim, go ahead and share your story.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I thought about telling earliest experiences. I don't think I'm going to do that. One of the things that has really convinced me over the years, though, is the research end of it, especially as being a historian and loving the research side. To me, that's really where I get into it, is trying to figure out what's real, what's not. My wife and I were both members of a paranormal investigation team here in Kansas for a number of years. It's probably been, I'd say probably 13, 14 years ago, we went and did a research in what they call the New Topeka Cemetery, which is actually the oldest cemetery in town. It's kind of weird because it's called the New Topeka Cemetery because in 1857 they moved the cemetery from what is now the downtown area about 8 blocks further out and put in a new cemetery. They moved about 500 bodies in the process of doing so.
They did the same thing in Mobile.
It's really kind of odd to think about that, because it's like, oh, here's the middle of the downtown Capitol. It's 2 blocks from the Capitol is where the original cemetery was. And they moved 500 bodies. I mean, it was kind of a strange situation. But as we were out there, we had our group out there, and everybody was supposed to be paired off. I was paired off with a guy named Eric. Eric is one of our videographers, does lots of photography for us. My wife was partnered with her partner out there. And so there's lots going on as we're out there enjoying that. And we travel with a psychic that is able to both see and hear spirits. She was communicating with a ghost that had told her that his father or his mother had planted the tree right next to his tombstone. Topeka Cemetery's records are so good that we know that tree was planted 60 years before, right next to his tombstone by his mother. So wow. Put the tree right there. We didn't know that when we went out there.
Wow.
I was actually using a K2 meter for one of the first times. I'm not a big person on electronics when it comes to ghost hunting. And I had it spike out on me. And in the middle of the cemetery, it shouldn't be doing so. So I took the thing apart, moved over a few feet, and it spiked again. Tried to finagle with it, moved over, and it spiked again. I said, hey, Eric, we need to follow whatever this is. And so Eric and I began a trek through the entire Topeka Cemetery. We went all the way down. There's a vice president of the United States buried in the Topeka Cemetery.
Cool.
Charles Curtis. We went all the way down past Charles Curtis's grave, came back up through what they call Mausoleum Row, and we're on our way back down through the cemetery when my wife pulled up next to me in the car. And at the time, we owned a Chevy Cavalier. And my wife says, hey, you said nobody wanders off by themselves. And I said, I didn't. Eric's right here with me. And she said, no, Eric's right here next to me in the car. And I, of course, am 6'5", so I had to look down into the car. And sure enough, Eric is sitting with her. But the entire time, Eric had been behind me throughout the cemetery. And I'm thinking, where in the world did this thing come from? And I turned around, and it was just gone. Whatever had followed me through the cemetery was not there anymore. What I've discovered since then is that in 1823, we have our first official report of it. It was a French fur trader that came to the area of Topeka to trade with the Kaw Indians, and he claimed in a Louisiana newspaper that he had seen something that shifted from the shape of a man down to a coyote and then shifted back up to a man. And then
Holy cow.
3 years ago, there's a researcher named Lisa Griff out of Sydney, Australia, who brought her team to the Topeka Cemetery, and they took 5 photographs. In those photographs, there are actually a team member that is standing about 10 feet from himself, where it's the exact same person, but the only time the thing is facing the camera, the face is completely black. What we figured out is it's probably actually a doppelganger. It's something that's learned to take on the form of something else it sees.
That was what popped in my head, was doppelganger.
That's what I thought of too.
Exactly. And Lisa in her book says that there's only about 200 of them that are probably natural occurrences in the entire world, which is what brought me looking for this thing. So it's kind of neat to have experienced it. It scared me to death, though. It's like, no, I don't want to mess with that again.
That is amazing. I mean, again, I've heard and read these doppelganger stories, but to experience, I mean, you were actually, quote unquote, investigating with him,
right,
while he was sitting in the car with your wife.
Right, exactly.
That's
I'm
not...
investigating with the doppelganger while the guy that I'm supposed to be investigating with is with my wife. And I'm like, every time I turned around, this thing was only 10 or 15 feet away. I mean, it was right there every time. It's like, well, okay, I wanted to make sure. One of the reasons that we were paired off so well is that the cemetery had its first murder about a month before.
Oh, my goodness.
The cemetery. They've had 5 in that cemetery in the last 6 years. And so
stirred things up a bit,
out of at night. Exactly. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And with what Tim does in researching this and writing stories, he'll have more to share with us later. And I know Tommy investigates up in Tennessee, and he has more stories. We're going to meet, and this is just off the top of my head. I haven't planned to talk to anybody about it, but we're going to meet Dagny down at the lighthouse in Pensacola and do some investigating there in the near future. I know she's mentioned something about wanting to go to the lighthouse there. But my wife finally made it in. Guys, there's Lynn. Say hey. Everybody,
good to see you this time.
She's feeling much better. All right. Have you decided, sweetheart, what you're going to share? Oh, wait, hold on. What?
One day I will get my nerve up and I'll go back to Coon Hill Cemetery and I'll bring a video camera and guarantee you some amazing shots, but I will not spend much time there. There's something very bad there.
Well, you did remind me before we get to Lynn's story. I was investigating with a group in Mobile, and we were at one of the largest cemeteries in the area, and we were in a mausoleum, getting tongue-tied, a mausoleum, and had a spirit box going, and right in the middle of it, it said, Tom did it. And everybody's looking around like, what'd you do, Tom? I said,
nobody was surprised, were they?
Yeah, no. And we still don't know what they were talking about. But my beautiful wife, Lynn, used to help me on the tours and told stories and help me keep the crowd corralled. As Tim can tell you, that's an important part of the job is, keeping people from wandering off and keeping them interested. And that was primarily her responsibility. But at some point, she went on a couple of investigations with me. And have you decided which one you want to share or what you want to share?
I guess we can talk about one of my favorite places in the world, or in the city of Mobile. We have a building downtown that I have absolutely fallen in love with this building. And we thought it was going to be torn down a few years ago, and that really broke my heart. But it's the Kennedy Building, and this is, one of the first investigations I went on with Tom. We were still dating, and I was sitting in the basement of this building by myself, and I'm telling these whoever, if anything's there, I don't really believe you're there. You got to prove it to me. I don't believe this stuff. I was raised up in church, and I'm a Christian, and we're not supposed to believe in this kind of stuff, And I sat there about 30 minutes, and finally I got up and left, and I went and met Tom in this other little room, and we were sitting there, nothing going on, and then I told Tom, I said, "We've got to get out of here. It's time to get out of this room." And so we got up and left. And then when he was listening to everything on my little recorder, from the time that I was sitting in the room by myself, there is a conversation going on between a male voice and a female voice, and it's a language I don't understand. Tom said it sounded Arabic. I don't know. But, I mean, this conversation is going on, and it lasted several minutes. Of course, I didn't hear it at the time. But then when we were in the other room and I told him it was time to leave, within just a minute after saying that, somebody spoke into my recorder and said, "Oh, well, that was," I was like, "We got to get out of here." And then immediately, there's Allah on my recorder. Is that weird? Yes.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody that don't, that I thought, this is some kind of strange stuff that he does, and I'll go with him, but I don't believe it. I don't,
Well, here's the
there was
thing.
something there.
Yeah. That building at one time was called Siemens
Bethel.
Yeah, Siemens Bethel, which it was like 10 blocks from the port. So sailors from around the world could come there and get a hot meal and what is that old saying about jail, 3 hots and a cot? And they would get a place to stay while they were waiting for their ship to be ready to get back out again. And so that EVP that came through was so freaking clear. I mean, it was said in a Middle Eastern accent, just Allah. And it was just, when I was going back through it, I had to play back several times. And we actually used it on tour from then on to say, hey, this is an EVP we captured because we always went past that building. You saw the building I was showing you. And we would share it right there. Very clear, very plain. I think they would call it a Class A EVP.
In that same building, Tom was doing a tour one night, and I wasn't with him. And they heard, there were footsteps running down the stairs inside the building, and of course, there was nobody in there. And when he got this stuff, he was able to record it temporarily. But it's just strange. And that was my first, what I thought was my first experience with stuff like this. And then I had some memories of other things that had happened, and I knew that these things were real, and I haven't talked about them in, God, many, many years.
Well, when it all comes out, I think we all have probably had more experiences than we would like to admit. Because, this is going on, it doesn't matter what if you believe portals or other dimensions, it's going on around us all the time.
I've been accused of being a pathological liar. I have, my mom has had to stick up for me in the past, to my school teachers and stuff.
Right. Well, we're at about 40 minutes, and I haven't shared my story yet. So we're going to try to wrap this up in the next few minutes, and thank everybody for being here. But I mentioned this to a couple. We were doing a video conference meeting or something a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't shared this story with very many people. As a matter of fact, I don't mind sharing it. It's just it's never come up in conversation, if you know what I mean. It's not like things like this would normally come up in conversation. But it was back in the 70s. I couldn't have been more than 11 or 12 years old, and my cousin and I were playing on my grandfather's farm. Now, I lived across the road from my grandparents, and behind my grandparents' house was where there was a fence with a gate, and then about 50, I'd say 50, 60 feet behind that, a barn. Now, that barn had originally been the Methodist church from down the road. When they built a new building, they sold the old building to my grandfather, who made it into a grain storage barn, and then he built lean-tos basically on three sides of it so that he could park equipment under there, trucks and tractors. I mean, I didn't realize this till years later being an adult. My grandfather had one of the largest farming operations in that area. But at the time, it was just Pap's farm, you know? So we were sitting there, we were playing at that barn at about twilight, my cousin and I, and he's a year younger than me. And on one side of the barn, basically facing the house, there was my grandfather had this grain bin or grain wagon that had a chute, or it was basically half of the trailer was only about 3 feet deep, and that was at the top, and it angled down to a chute on the other side. So one side high up was only about 3 feet, and the other side was probably 4 or 5 feet, if you get the mental image of what I'm putting out here. And the bottom of that chute, I mean, literally had like a guillotine that on the outside you could pull a handle and it would open up and all the grain would slide out. So for whatever reason, I don't know if we were playing Army or Cowboys, but we were in that grain wagon and standing on the tall end, which being young kids, the side of it came to about our shoulders, and so we were kind of leaning up on it. And we heard something that sounded like footsteps inside the barn that was behind us, because remember, we were under one of the lean-tos. So the light was on in there, so we crawled out. There was a ladder on one side. We crawled out, went inside the door, and when we opened the door, the footsteps stopped. And we looked at each other like, oh boy. So we reached over and I turned out the light, and when I did, we heard the footsteps outside. Now, granted, it sounded just like footsteps walking on wooden boards. There were no wooden boards out there for people to walk on. It was ground. It was grass and dirt. And so we were really freaking out by this time. So there was a light on outside the lean-to, and by this time it's dark. So we get out there and I reach up, turn out the light, and I tell my cousin, all right, when I turn out this light, we're going to run. He's like, okay. So he flips out the light, and we take off up toward my grandparents' house, and we get to the fence that's right behind the house, and without speaking, without communicating with each other, we both stop, and we turned back and looked, and in that grain wagon that we had just been in, we saw a full-bodied apparition, or what I came to later learn was a full-bodied apparition, but it was standing in the same place we had been, so we could only see it like from the waist up. But it was like, the best way I can describe it is when you see a phantom on Scooby-Doo. You see no features, but it's glowing bright white. And you see dark spots for eyes, nose, and mouth. And that's what we saw. We saw this glowing being stand up there with hands on both sides of the wagon. We could see the separation between his arms and his torso. We could see dark spots for his eyes, nose, and mouth. And it was standing where we had just been, not even a minute before. Now, you know how it is in those situations. We don't know if we stood there 10 seconds or 30 minutes, but we stood, I mean, we were just kind of glued to this. And again, without speaking, we we turned around and we ran past my grandparents' house all the way to my house on the other side of the road, and got there out of breath and wouldn't tell anybody about it. But I couldn't let it go. I mean, I'm sitting there that night saying, and maybe it's just the way my brain thinks. I was going over every angle, trying to figure out what I really saw. It couldn't have been a ghost. There's no way it could have been a ghost. So, with no flashlight, 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid, I wasn't even thinking. I trekked all back down there, and I go back to the barn. Of course, it's gone by this time. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out, it had to have been a reflection. That's what my thought was. There was a light reflecting off of something, and that's what we saw. I don't know why I was thinking that. But by this time, I was already in search of, and, the weird stuff. But I knew I couldn't see a ghost. There was no way. And I mean, I've found it there. What most people call them street lights, but out in the country we call them booger lights. and there was a few booger lights out in the country. One was about a mile in one direction, and one was about a mile in the other direction. And the way the barn was situated, I was thinking there was a workbench underneath there that had a mirror sitting up on it. And I figured, well, one of those lights was reflecting off of that mirror. I go down there, and that mirror is sitting up about this high. You can see that. The top of the grain trailer we were in was like this high. So from our angle way back here, there's no way we could have seen a light off a mirror that was covered up by a trailer this high. I couldn't make sense of it. And to this day, I know I saw a full-bodied apparition. And that's the best way I can describe it. And a couple of years ago, I asked my cousin about it. We had not spoken about it since then. And I said, do you remember that? And he was like, yes.
We won't talk about it.
He won't talk about it. It doesn't bother me.
I love your little quote about true, the only true experience, the true facts are like derived from your own experience. I can't say it the same way you do. I love that. It's perfect. Say it again.
The actual saying is the only true and irrefutable evidence of the paranormal is personal experience.
I love it. It's on point.
Well, nobody can deny that. And we've run way over the time, and I've, we may do this every time. I don't know, but
You will.
I've enjoyed this. Okay, Tommy, what are you doing? Haunted Tennessee.
Daughter-in-law just brought the mail in. I got these in today.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah, me too. And I got one of 15.
Well,
yeah, I got them too, and I got one of 15.
Hey, that's Christine's. Christine is not feeling good, and she wasn't able to be with us, but she got her book. Y'all need to get Tim's book, Tim Shepard. You can find him on Amazon. All right. And what's the best way to find you, Tim, and your books?
Just look up Prairie Ghosts is the name of the first one, and that'll connect you to my author link, and you can get in there and find them that way. Good. And you've got two books of Kansas ghost stories in there based with the history behind them. So you can actually see the history of the haunting as well as what's been experienced.
Right. I think I downloaded a Kindle version of your second book. I got to go back and check now. I've got a hard copy of your first one. Yeah. But, all right, we're going to have to close out now. We're coming up on 50 minutes. But like I said, we may do this every time. We may have to just say, okay, we're an hour show. We wanted to be a 30-minute show, but probably going to have to do an hour, especially if they're all this cool. I don't know about you guys, but these stories have been awesome. Yeah. And we get to share these with other folks that dig this kind of stuff. Well, let me say this. I think I got my. Hold on a second. We got a comment. Andrea, one of our ETs.
Yeah, I love that.
You guys rocked this. I had fun listening. That was cool. But yes, we did. We want your stories. If you're watching this, we want your stories. So I want you, I think we got our email working now. I want you to whoops, I got to fix that. I got a typo, folks. Where is it? That strangejourneys.live. I want you to, where'd it go? I want you to email me your paranormal story, and there's a good possibility that we may get you on to share your story just like these guys did. Now, because the rest of our ET couldn't be here, all these other ETs, I love saying that, couldn't be here with us, we're going to have to come back. We had to come back with another Personnel Paranormal and let them share their stories. How does that sound? But yes, email me at tom@strangejourneys.live, and we will at least read your story on, and we'll share your name if you want us to. If you don't want us to, that's fine. And we will get your story out here, because that's the main thing. We're doing this for you guys because we want to hear from you. We're going to share our stories. We're going to share the stuff that we've researched, and then we want to hear what you've experienced. We've got one coming up. I'm already working on the show outline for phantom phone calls. Be watching out for that one. That one's kind of freaky. I personally have gotten about 15 or 20. Yeah, it's over 20 phantom phone calls that I personally have gotten. They're not evil or, I don't know. They're just weird. And we're going to share that with you and other phantom phone calls. And we're going to be doing this Personnel Paranormal again with the others when they make it in here. So before we go, email us your stories at tom@strangejourneys.live, or if you're on the Strange Journeys podcast page, just send us a private message and we'll get it that way. So remember, the Teespring store with the merch, come by and see us, teespring.com/stores/strangejourneys.stuff. Use the code intro20 and get your 20% discount this weekend. Go there now and pick out something cool. All right. So, Tim, say goodbye.
Have a good night.
Lynn.
See y'all next time.
Dagny.
Bye, guys.
Tommy.
Everybody be safe.
Okay. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see you next time. Appreciate you being here on Strange Journeys.